A huge public transport revolution is taking place in Greater Manchester. This weekend will see the rollout of the first publicly controlled bus networks in the city region since Margaret Thatcher ushered in privatisation. Over the next 2 years, buses within the Greater Manchester area will stop being run by competing private operators. Instead, they'll be controlled by one public body, Transport for Greater Manchester, with contracts franchised out to operators. And these contracts will contain pre-agreed route times, ticket prices. Profit from this network will then be reinvested back into TfGM. This overhaul is a flagship project of Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham. It's niftily called the B Network, and it could be a lasting legacy for Burnham. This map from local brilliant media outlet Manchester Mill shows the B Network rollout. On Sunday, the first B Network buses will trundle into action across Bolton, Wigan, Manchester City Centre and parts of Bury and Salford. In March 2024, it will extend to Rochdale, Oldham and surrounding areas. And by January 2025, the B Network should have rolled out in the entire Greater Manchester region. Private operators, of course, have not been in favour of the changes. Transport giant Stagecoach even threw up a legal challenge, just a review, in fact, in 2017 to stop the passing of legislation that would allow mayoral combined authorities to move to a franchising model. Sour grapes. Of course, they wouldn't be fans given the loss of profit it poses, but they've still managed to fall in line and bid for the contracts regardless. The main obstacle now facing Burnham's B Network is the need to drive up bus ridership and corresponding revenues. Bus ridership in Greater Manchester had fallen even before the pandemic. From 2010 to 2020, bus usage in the region fell by nearly 43 million journeys. However, B Network supporters say that this is due to the impact of deregulation. If reliable joined-up bus services are provided, passengers will use them. And there's evidence to say that is true. London, which uses the same franchising system, has seen bus ridership remain consistent and actually outperform post-pandemic tube uses. I bike everywhere, but I certainly get a bus more than I get a tube. And earlier today, I spoke to Matthew Topham, a campaigner at Better Buses for Greater Manchester. I started by asking him about the benefits of taking the buses back into public control.
The biggest benefit is the fact that we no longer have a system run purely in the interests of fat cat shareholders, mainly based overseas. That's the number one thing. But as a rollout from that, you start to unlock new benefits, like the system can be fully integrated because it's not set up as a Wild West market with competing companies. You can start to have cross-subsidy of services, so quieter routes are funded through the profits made off those really busy commuter routes. And you can also start to have that fundamental thing in a public service of accountability. The service doesn't just listen to the voices of people on a company board, it listens to the needs of local people and responds to them in designing the network.
And when we're talking about this idea of being better integrated, what does that actually mean? Does it mean, they can design it so that buses run in tandem with when trams are leaving in Manchester, for example, or when trains are leaving?
Absolutely. So if anyone else has had the experiences I've had, you can sometimes be on a bus looking to get on to the next part of your journey. And just as your bus pulls in on time, amazingly, you can see the train pulling out of the station because the bus operator has designed the timetable to keep you riding their buses, not getting onto the fastest form of transport that could be up next. And so what we can see now is Burnham and folks in Greater Manchester designing the network so it works to get the local community from door to door as quick as possible, not just to maximise the profits of these companies.
How did the B Network come into being? Obviously, this is seen as Andy Burnham's flagship policy, but as a lead campaigner on Better Buses for Manchester, I'm sure that you guys must have had some input into this as well. What's been the timeline to see the B Network realised?
To be completely frank, the full timeline is 37 years since Margaret Thatcher stole the operation of local buses from local people and handed it completely over to private companies. But bringing it forward a little bit, it's been partly a story of devolution and that devolution deal coming in Greater Manchester and a change to the law to allow public control. But actually, the campaign and the push from local people really got started in September time of 2018. And from there, my predecessor, the fantastic Pascal Robinson, pulled together a coalition from across the region, from across trade unions, from community voices, renters, and even religious communities like the Quakers all got involved and fought together to make sure that Andy Burnham knew this wasn't just a policy for him to look into and then dismiss. This was something that he had to do if he was going to control and win the respect and the support of people across Greater Manchester.
What have been some of the key obstacles to see the B network come into being, if you'll excuse the pun? I know there was a lawsuit in 2017 from Stagecoach. Anything else like that?
So not only did the companies running the buses currently throw their toys out of the pram and try to fight to hold on to their monopolistic power in the region through the courts, they fought this at every step along the way. So these companies who you can't get to work together for love and money when you want a reliable service, got together in a group called One Bus to put forward basically a disinformation campaign saying that public control was going to be unaffordable, that it was going to cause significant disruption, when we know that every other European country has been doing this for the last 40 years and beyond. If they can all manage it okay, we know that Greater Manchester can. And yet these bus companies, throughout the campaign for buses to come back into public control, were fighting it tooth and nail in the press, online, setting up even daft Twitter accounts that they used to run. And then, as you say, finally through the courts as well.
Central government funding for publicly controlled, franchised out networks like TfL and like Transport for Greater Manchester has decreased in recent years under the Conservatives. We don't know if there's a Labour government next year, whether that will be restored or not. There's a lot of hullabaloo about whether the B network will ever turn a profit. Do you think it matters whether the public service turns a profit or not?
Of course, a public service's duty is to be that bedrock for the rest of our community and for the rest of the economy. And so what we need to see is it run to maximize those benefits. If we can't get people into work, if we can't get them into education, if we can't get them into healthcare, then we will all be the poorer for it. So this idea that it has to break even on its own is completely ludicrous, because it weakens the case for all the rest of our services and for the rest of the economy. But we also know from where buses are in full public ownership in the UK, places like Edinburgh, Reading, that they actually do often turn a profit that can be reinvested. And up in Edinburgh, that money was used to build their tram. So we know that it is likely to manage it, but we also know that it is too important to leave to the whims of that kind of market ideology. We have to fund public transport so that it works in the public interest.